Hey guys, welcome to Lingua Marina. Today we're going to talk about disagreeing with people. And I know these situations happen very often, and when I first came to the US, I used my Russian culture where we disagree with people, like say, no, you're wrong. Like, we're very straightforward people in Russia. In America, it doesn't work that way. It can be actually really offensive if you just say, no, you're wrong. I think it's this, and that. So when I was studying here and I went through a filmmaking course, when I was just dealing with people, they would kind of correct me sometimes, say, Marina, that's not the right way to disagree with people. You should do this, and that. So I decided that in this video, I'm gonna collect all of my experience. I'm gonna share some tips and tricks that you can use to disagree with people without becoming too angry, without starting a fight. So if you're interested in both learning some new vocabulary and also learning some cultural aspects of living in the US and most of the Western world, I guess, please continue watching this video. First of all, when you disagree with people, please start with facts. When you disagree with someone, it's not like a personal thing. It's not just that you want to show a person that you disagree with everything they do. Well, sometimes we have those situations. We're not going to talk about them, but disagree with facts. Like, for example, if somebody tells you it's gonna rain in an hour, you'll be like, I actually just checked my app and it's not gonna rain. What does your app say? So, talk about facts. Don't say, oh no, you're wrong, you are stupid, you haven't considered this, and that, haven't even looked at your phone. This is too much. Also, when you talk about facts, it just makes you more convincing. Because when you're talking facts, you actually have a ground to disagree. When you're talking just based on your emotions and what you think about another person, that doesn't really support your opinion. The second tip here is to just be indirect. And being indirect is a thing that can confuse you when you come to the US, because a lot of Americans are very indirect with everything. If they disagree with you or they don't like something, they can start their phrase by, wow, you're amazing and I really like your work, and you're like, and then it's going to be followed up by, but unfortunately, we think that it doesn't meet our investment criteria or whatever. When I was fundraising for a Lingua trip with my husband, all of the replies from investors, and we had like over 50 meetings, I guess we had more, but all of the replies would start with, you guys are doing an amazing job, your company is great, but, and then they would say that they basically don't want to invest. So, and that was super confusing because at first you think, like, if the people think that your company is great, why don't they invest? So this is the way of how Americans are indirect with their feedback. They would always start with something positive and then disagree or say something negative. And even the negative thing that they're saying, it wouldn't sound too negative. It would sound like if it's their fault, not your fault, that they're not investing or they don't want to hire you or they don't want to accept you to the university or whatever. And so what you've noticed here from my story, it's like always going from you to me. So I would never say, oh my God, your idea is horrible. I would say, if I want to sound polite and indirect, I would say, I don't really think that this idea would work.
I don't think that would be a good idea.
You see how I am trying to be polite? I'm not saying it's a horrible idea. And also, I am trying to take away somebody else's pain or somebody else's fault to me. I just don't think it's a good idea. Instead of saying, it's a horrible idea. Or instead of saying, you're wrong, you're stupid, I would say, I am not sure I can agree.
I gotta say, I'm not too sure I agree with that.
So you see how I'm always talking to another person through myself. I'm not sure I can agree with this. I'm not sure this idea is gonna work. I don't think it's the right thing to do. So it's always about me, not about another person. Here's another thing. Don't be over polite as well. Like, don't overdo. And I think you could overdo being polite by saying sorry. Because I think a lot of Americans and a lot of native speakers use sorry way too often. Even if, the most common situation is when you're running and it's a rush hour and somebody bumps into you and you say, I'm sorry. Like, it's even not your fault. You were just there and another person didn't notice you. I would avoid saying sorry just because you have a different opinion. But again, it's up to you. Quick pause here. Disagreeing with someone directly is one of the most common mistakes people make in English, and I made it many, many times and people were like, eh? Because there are some grammar mistakes that you make There are vocabulary mistakes that you make, and there are cultural mistakes. Well, I wouldn't call them mistakes necessarily, but you need to understand a culture before you can actually speak like a native speaker. So if you struggle with making mistakes, my team at LinguaTrip and I have created a workbook that actually goes through 365 mistakes that are very, very common for non-native speakers in English. Just imagine you get this workbook and every single day you learn how to not make another mistake. An example of a mistake, when I came to the US, I said, I and Dimitri, my husband, we started a company, which is completely wrong. Dimitri and I have started a company, because when you're talking about yourself and somebody else goes on the first place in the sentence. Those kinds of mistakes are in that workbook with real examples, with very intuitive explanations, and we have a special prize for you today. The link will be down below. Check it out, download it, and learn how to speak English better every single day by tackling one of the mistakes that a lot of non-native speakers make in English. The link will be down below. Now let's get back to the class and learn some phrases that would help you disagree with a person in a polite way. Are you sure that's possible? And also please pay attention to the way you pronounce this phrase. Because when you say, are you sure that's possible? It's kind of you being sarcastic. When you're genuinely wondering, are you sure that's possible? It sounds a lot more polite. The same with, I wonder if it's true. Like, again, once you play with your intonation, there's a completely different meaning to the phrase. It sounds a lot better when you say, I wonder if that's true. Let's check. Really? I wonder if it works like that.
I wonder if it still works this way.
Interesting. Really?
Really? Interesting.
This word interesting, we keep laughing at it with our friends because whenever we use it, like I tried something, I think it was food at a restaurant, and I hated it, and I was like, because I wanted to be polite, I said, that's an interesting flavor. And everybody started laughing because they know what I mean under interesting. I mean, horrible. When you say, like, for example, you see this course online that tells you, you're gonna become rich in 3 days after taking this course. I'm gonna teach you how to buy a Lambo in a month. And you're like, interesting, really? And with this interesting, you just say that, I don't believe that's gonna work. But again, watch your intonation, don't be too skeptical. Maybe that's the real course where you get rich in 3 days or whatever. Another way to disagree indirectly is just to state your opinion. And when you start your phrase with well or actually, these words would indicate that you're actually disagreeing. So people will get that you're disagreeing without you actually saying that you're disagreeing, if you know what I mean. Let me give you an example. Let's not invite friends and go to a restaurant tonight instead. Actually, I think we'll have a better time with our friends. You know this, actually, I think we should invite them. That just indicates that you disagree. Let's look at another example. Titanic is the best movie of all time. Well, in my opinion, Citizen Kane is better. By the way, watch Citizen Kane. One of the best movies I've watched. Is classic, and everyone, well, a lot of people in America I know watched it. And when you learn a language, it's important to know the context. So when you're speaking to a native speaker and they mention Citizen Kane, you're like, oh yeah, Marina told me to watch it and I watched it and now I can support the conversation. So always try to watch movies that people are talking about. Try to follow different people, try to learn what's going on in the world. So not only you can sound good at English, but also you can support conversations. I found it really important because, okay, quick story. When I first came to the UK, my friends were discussing all of the stories. Like there was a rabbit story that everyone read when they were a kid, and I didn't read it because I grew up in Russia and we had completely different fairy tales. And I'm just teaching Emily, my daughter, all of the local stories and all of the local fairy tales because I want her to be in context when she goes to kindergarten, when she goes to school. I want her to know what other kids were reading when they just lived with their families. So it's really important to be in the context, and this is why I highly recommend watching Citizen Kane. When we go back to the example, when I say, well, I actually think Citizen Kane is better, so this well indicates that I'm disagreeing. You can also acknowledge another person's opinion before actually stating your opinion, because it would just help other people understand that you're listening to them, not just disagreeing. And there are some phrases that you can use for that as well. I see what you're saying, but... and then you continue.
I see what you're saying.
I understand where you're coming from, but...
I understand where you're coming from.
That's a valid point, but...
That is a valid point.
And after this but, you can introduce your opinion. There is some truth to what you're saying, but don't you think that if you ask me, I think we should, and then you suggest. Instead, I think we could go out all together, invite our friends. My suggestion would be to do something.
My suggestion would be...
An alternative solution might be, I would recommend that what do you think about having lunch outside instead? Another helpful tip is to find common ground, which means that you pick some things that you actually agree with in another person's statement, and then you add something else. Well, I agree with you on, and then you state the common ground. Have you considered blah, blah, blah? An example would be, well, I agree with you on the point that we have to change our strategy. Have you considered a less aggressive approach? Now, there are some phrases that are a little more direct, and they're a little more like when you have to cut it, because sometimes you get to a point where you don't want to be too polite. Let's learn those phrases as well. You have to know them. I'm afraid I disagree. I'm afraid I have to disagree.
I'm afraid I have to say no.
I'm not sure about that.
I'm not so sure about that.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Again, those phrases can be said with such an intonation and such context that they don't sound impolite. I don't see it that way.
I didn't see it that way.
Or you can simply say, yes, but.
Yes, but.
Let's wrap up this video with some informal phrases that you can use to disagree. No way. Oh my god, no way. This is not true. This isn't happening.
No way.
You must be joking. Somebody tells you, you need another handbag, and you're like, you must be joking. I already have 20 of them.
You must be joking.
You can't be serious. Let's go to Maldives next month. You can't be serious. I'm having a baby next month.
You can't be serious.
But sometimes it's just impossible to disagree with a person all the time, and you can wrap up your conversation with a phrase, let's agree to disagree. And then you part, still being friends without having to fight.
Let's agree to disagree.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video up to the very end. If you're not yet subscribed to this channel, please hit subscribe and hit the like button. I'll see you very soon in my next videos. Bye bye.